Hello and welcome to this brief tutorial on writing good comments in code. Comments in code should be descriptive. They should describe what the intent of the code is in plain language that is not too technical. You should be careful not to write pseudocode, which is comments that read just like the code does. By using descriptive variable names, the code itself should be easily readable. I found a very good practice is to write the comments first and then write the code. Waiting to write the comments after writing the code makes it a big job. Writing comments first also helps to think through the code step by step. Once you have thought through the code and written the comments first, it makes it fairly easy to then go back and fill in the blanks. Now let's look at a simple example. We'll write a function to convert degrees Kelvin to degrees Celsius. First, write a description of the function at the head of the function before the first line of code. Sometimes you will see elaborate multi-line headers with horizontal rules, detailed descriptions of all the parameters with their data types. For our purposes, this is overkill. A simple 1 or 2 line description is fine. Next, we think through what we want our function to do step by step. First, for any function that takes data as parameters, it is always good practice to check that the data is within expected values. This comment seems descriptive, but it reads too much like pseudocode and doesn't tell us much about the intent behind the code. This comment is a better description of what we are trying to accomplish. Next, the code block that runs if the check is true. Again, not very descriptive. We don't know what is being calculated. Next, the code block that runs if the data check is false. Again, not very descriptive, and it reads too much like pseudocode. Better to label this code block for what it is. We got here because the data is not valid. Finally, a reminder to return our data and what that data is. Now that we have thought through our function, and all the comments are written, it is very easy to go back and fill in the code. First, our function definition. Next, the data check, which is an if-then-else type of logic control. Here we'll check that Kelvin is a non-zero number. Next, the Celsius calculation. Next is the else clause, where we land if the data is not valid. Maybe we'll print an error here. Here it is important to remember that error messages need to be just as descriptive as our comments. And finally, we return our data. This code is so self-explanatory, the comment really serves no other purpose except to remind us to return a value so we can remove it now. Looks good. You may have noticed that we left out one important detail. If the data is not valid, we do not set a value for Celsius. Setting it to a null value will serve as a flag so that the code that called this function can check it and decide what to do next. I would also add one more thing. We clearly labeled the block where the data is not valid. Let's also label the block where the data is valid. This may seem obvious, but I like to do this for clarity. This is especially true where there are large nested blocks of code. In cases like this, it can be easy to get lost and forget what a block is supposed to be doing. That concludes our tutorial. Thanks for watching and happy commenting.